Once again, Missouri has lost to a double-digit seed in the NCAA Tournament, and unfortunately, Dennis Gates has lost a lot of his goodwill.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And I'm sure all of you have had a few deep sighs this morning as well. I do want to tell you quickly, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever had less fun watching a Missouri basketball game than that. At least Missouri scored in the 80s in the loss to Norfolk State all the way back in 2012. I mean, that was a truly pathetic offensive showing, especially for a team that came into the game fifth in the country in terms of adjusted offensive rating, adjusted for opponent, pace, and everything else. Tigers fifth in the country. Well, they were so bad yesterday that game alone actually dropped them down to eighth to finish the year for Missouri. Obviously, some more basketball to be played outside of the Missouri program, but regardless, if you break it down by quarter yesterday, here's how the Tigers did in terms of scoring: 12, 11, 11, and 23. Absolutely brutal. There's no other way to put it than that. And the Tigers, thank goodness they made their free throws. 23 of 26 at the line. That was about the only thing that Missouri did well. And heck, Drake actually only made half their free throws, 12 of 24, especially late in the game. The Bulldogs tried to keep the Tigers in it, if anything. And just way too many turnovers for Missouri. Obviously, you have to give Drake some credit. They were number one in steal percentage, apparently for a reason. You know, I thought Tony Perkins had a nice start to the game, but then he, like much of our team, forgot how to dribble the basketball. I was just surprised by just how weak Missouri's handle was at times and just how weak and lazy some of their passes were on the perimeter. It was like Missouri hadn't scouted this team or practiced all week. It was just very frustrating to watch on about a bajillion different levels. And by the way, the old Dennis Gates bingo hopper lineups seem to return. But to be fair, who played well in that basketball game? And also, to be fair to all the people, including myself at times, who have thought, you know, it'd be nice if our guys had a little bit more defined roles. You know, it's tougher to play well in that type of spotlight, whether it's on the road or especially in the NCAA tournament, when your role is less defined, when you're looking over your shoulder on occasion. That's just human nature, I think. Grill, other than Caleb Grill, Mark Mitchell, and Tamar Bates, those guys know they're going to play, 30-some-odd minutes no matter what, basically. But everybody else, I think everybody else didn't play that great is the other problem. Other than really T.O. Barrett, he was a steady hand, I will say, in his 11 minutes. He was probably I would say he was the bright side of the game, if anything. Also had some of my friends, texting me during the game wondering where Josh Gray was. And I have to say, that wasn't really the strategy I was wanting Missouri to go with. I actually liked the starting five. I liked putting Caleb Grill into the starting five, get an extra shooter in there, along with Mark Mitchell. I just thought Mark Mitchell was going to be able to feast in this basketball game against Drake, but, well, maybe I underestimated Drake. Maybe I overestimated Mark Mitchell. I don't know, whatever. If you want to do the old, bad take, nice call, bro, you want to do that thing in the comments, go right ahead, because it was a bad take. It was definitely wrong. Mark Mitchell did not play well whatsoever. I thought, hey, just surround him with shooting, let him go to work. But I thought at times, and this was Missouri was guilty of this offensively, earlier in the season, I thought we had gotten this out of the system where at times the offense just bogs down into, Mitchell basically trying to put his head down and get to the basket. And when that doesn't work, for some reason, it just seemed like the rest of the Tigers were a little bit too passive. I thought, hey, spread it out, let these guys attack off of the dribble. But too often, Missouri was just simply incapable of doing that. So really just disgusting offense. There's really no other way to say it than that. There is no excuse to me, there's no excuse for our offense to be this hard. Drake obviously is a good defensive team. Were they truly the number one defensive team in the country? Well, by scoring they were, but it really is hard for me to believe that Drake is a better defensive team than, say, Tennessee or Florida or Texas A&M. It was never that hard against those teams. Again, Missouri just looked almost like they had been looking past Drake or something like that, and we're scouting for Texas A&M or something like that. And by the way, in terms of hustle and actually winning the 50-50 balls, that looked like Drake was playing a Missouri team in late November or something like that instead of the NCAA tournament. I was disappointed with the fact that I felt like Drake definitely won the majority of those 50-50 balls. As a player, what can you say? It's the NCAA tournament. If you can't get after the loose balls in that situation, when are you going to do it? Now, while technically Missouri scored its most points in that final fourth quarter, well, so did Drake as well. And a lot of that, of course, was free throws at the end. But some of it, I just didn't love the way Dennis Gates played the end game, where Missouri had a chance at one point, got it down to a couple possessions, maybe down to one. I don't have it right off the top of the replay play-by-play here, but I thought Missouri defensively decided, I guess we just have to start, junking the game up defensively and trapping and all that kind of stuff. I thought as slow and methodical as Drake was in the half court, maybe counterintuitively, in my opinion, that actually played into their hands because, well, I thought really making, one reason, again, put Mark Mitchell out there with a bunch of shooters who can all, because Missouri is big on the perimeter, relatively speaking, they're all about the same size as Bennett Sturtz, talking about, Bates and Grill and Anthony Robinson and Perkins, they're all about the same size. So just switch everything onto Sturtz and, hey, make him go one-on-one. Make him score. Make him score every single point for Drake because really the rest of that team, there was nobody who was a huge threat in that ball game. Honestly, who else were you scared of scoring for Drake? I mean, Tavion Banks had a nice game, but he wasn't exactly, I'm not trying to kill Drake here. I'm trying to kill Missouri, to be honest. I'm so disappointed by this loss, as you can see. And by the way, speaking of that end game, I thought when Anthony Robinson drove late and, had a lane and then kind of got caught under the basket, picks up his dribble and Drake ends up knocking it off of his leg. I thought that was kind of a pretty good microcosm of the entire game. Why was Missouri so hesitant? Why was our ball handling so awful? Robinson just clearly was discombobulated and hesitant and just didn't know what to do on that drive. After basically 39 minutes of basketball, there was really nothing more else you needed to see. And commentator Clay Travis, who's known to have a controversial opinion now and again, said, factoring in seeding and upsets, I think Mizzou is the most cursed NCAA tournament team of all time. 29 trips to the tourney with no Final Fours. Only BYU, Xavier have more trips without a Final Four. Tennessee is fourth on the list. Well, Clay, that is the least controversial thing I've ever heard anyone say. It's quite clear that Missouri has the most disgusting NCAA tournament history in history. And I'll make that case coming up here in just a little bit. And, of course, talk more about this game in just a little bit. But, of course, I do want to talk about Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where'd all my money go? Come on, man. Well, Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's going to let you know exactly where your money did go because it's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. Also, all-in-one convenience. You're not going to have to juggle multiple apps. You can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. And game time. Watching your favorite team live. Nothing like the energy of seeing your team lose as a double-digit favorite in person. Am I right? Great stuff. Who doesn't want to do that again? Well, when you do, you got to use the Game Time app. They're amazing deals on huge matchups all the time. Super deals, the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you up to 110% of the price difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So while BYU and Xavier have more trips to the tournament without a Final Four than Missouri, I would point out, a few things. Number one, Missouri has finished ranked in the AP poll more times than either one of those programs. They've also had, a lot more weeks total ranked in the AP poll, including twice as many as BYU, for example, and 311 to 201 for Xavier. So Missouri is clearly the best program that has never made a Final Four, other than maybe Tennessee. Tennessee is fourth on the list as Xavier, as Clay Travis pointed out. He's a Tennessee guy, I believe. 19 to 374. So actually Tennessee more weeks finished in the AP poll than Missouri. So you could argue, maybe they have a more cursed history. Well, not actually the results in the tournament themselves. The Vols have lost a 5-12 game. They've also lost in the second round as a 3 seed twice. They lost in the second round as a 2 seed a couple of times as well. Maybe that'll happen to them again this season. But again, compared to Missouri, I would say that's cute, Tennessee fans, because starting a little 4-year run in the late 80s, the Tigers, the 87 Big 8 regular season and tournament champs, as a 4 seed, speaking of Xavier, lost by 1 to the Musketeers at the RCA Dome, by the way, in Indianapolis. What a bizarre setting for a first-round game. I guess the NCAA loved having 40,000 empty seats, I've got to assume, in the building there. Pretty bizarre. But then 88 lost in the first round, the 6-11. Hey, does that sound familiar to yesterday? To Rhode Island. Then in 89, the 3-seeded Tigers did lose to a really good Syracuse team in the Sweet 16. But then 1990, probably the team whose roster I remember vividly at the earliest age, lost as a 3 seed famously to Northern Iowa. So that's a pretty brutal 4-year run already. 3 first-round losses, big upsets, by the way, in 4 years, and we're barely into the 64-team era. Then Missouri misses the tournament for 1 season, followed by another 4-year Norm Stewart run. Nothing too terribly upsetting in terms of upsets, but this does include the famous Tyus Edney loss and a loss to Arizona in the Elite 8 as a 1 seed, which was one of the most painful losses of my life as well. Then you have some fairly pedestrian performances in 5 Quinn Snyder appearances, save that magical 12 seed run to the Elite 8, which again, of course, of course, finishes with a brutally painful loss to Oklahoma, where Clarence Gilbert goes 1 of 15 from the field. Then you have the Mike Anderson, Frank Haith, a 5-year run, Missouri's last Elite Eight appearance in Mike Anderson's first appearance with Missouri, by the way, Norfolk State. Yes, that's right, Norfolk State. A 2 losing to a 15. Well, then Missouri would not win another tournament game for 11 seasons until it beat Utah State in 2023 before, of course, losing to 15th seeded Princeton. Speaking of 15, that was the margin of victory in that game, by the way. The Princeton Tigers did not just beat Missouri in that game, they slaughtered them in that game. And now this, Missouri gets embarrassed by Drake, quite honestly. You know, that game, the Drake game, and frankly, getting beat by Princeton too, along with the 0-19 season previously, you know, it not only makes me question my own faith in Dennis Gates a little bit, it honestly makes me question if I have any knowledge of this sport whatsoever after watching basketball for 40 years. One game, Missouri. One stinking game. That's all I needed you to win. Listen, I know I filled out my bracket and optimistically said I think the Tigers are going to the Final Four. I didn't even really care about the Final Four that much. I just needed you to win this game. I could have lived with a second-round exit to Texas Tech. I really could have. That's a good ball club. But to lose to Drake, God love you, Drake fans. I'm not trying to kill your team here, but this is just about as brutal as it gets, especially, again, if this was the second or third time this had happened to Missouri, but that history I just went down there, I'm telling you, I didn't do that because it's Missouri. I just simply ended up having with a full page of brutality of notes for Missouri, whereas those other programs I mentioned who haven't made a Final Four, well, they had a few footnotes of, well, that one was pretty painful. Missouri's history in the NCAA tournament is unfathomably bad. And speaking of things that are unfathomably bad, college basketball officiating. And you know what? I'm not just going to complain about yesterday's officiating, though, as usual, the refs made the game pretty unfun to watch, in my opinion. No, this isn't going to be actual just complaining. I'm going to have some solutions coming up here in just a little bit. And you know what? I'll tell you this. If Missouri's getting you down, you probably need an energy boost. Well, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine, by the way, now that it's daylight savings time, means more time for fun and not watching basketball, because sometimes you need a little energy boost just to power through. And if you're staying up late watching all these tournament games, by the way, a little 5-Hour Energy helps keep me up the next day. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find more than 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So good old Ken Pomeroy over at kenpom.com has so much freaking data that he even has data on the officials, too. So when I looked at the bottom of the box score and noticed Pat Adams' name down there, well, I thought, let's give this a click. What the heck? Because Pat Adams is definitely a name I've noticed this season, and I've even had some complaints from Auburn fans, for instance. I know Zach Blackerby may not be the biggest Pat Adams guy in the world, but I'll say this. You click on the Pat Adams bio and you notice, old Pat did 7 Missouri games this season, including, well, of course, the Drake loss last night. That's where we're talking about him at the moment, but he also did the win at Florida and also the KU victory as well. Losses to Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Memphis, and Auburn in there too. So not exactly a real pattern there to think, oh, Pat Adams is against Missouri or anything like that. That's not really the point I'm going to make here. The point here is more notably, this was the very first Mizzou game that either Darren George or Michael Palau, or whatever the heck his name is, the other two officials, this was the first Missouri game that either one of them had officiated all season. And by the way, those two guys, unlike Pat Adams, who is doing a lot of SEC games, a lot of high major games, those other two officials are doing mostly mid-major games all season. And guess what? I thought it showed out there to me. But one, I think the real point here is that it's pretty terrible that we can't have 3-man crews that just work together all season in college basketball. Well, no wonder the officiating is horrible at this level. Considering the amount of money sloshing around in the coffers at the SEC and the Big Ten and the NCAA for all the March Madness revenue that TV contract gives us, they can't give us 3-man crews. Now we're just going to throw Pat Adams in there with 2 guys he's probably never met in his entire life. And these guys are just going to, these are the type of crews we're just going to haphazardly throw together and say, hey, good luck. Go ahead and do March Madness. Good luck to you. This is the plan, really, NCAA. No wonder the officiating sucks. No wonder your product kind of sucks most of the time. Thank you very much for not even trying to put out a decent officiating product. Again, my complaints here, it's not so much like, oh, Missouri got screwed by the refs yesterday. That's not my point at all here. So anybody who's trying to say that, go buzz off and take a long walk off a short pier. The point here is that these officials are ruining the game. Not just yesterday's game, the game in general. You know, maybe we wouldn't need all these instant replay stoppages if we had 3 guys and gals, whatever. Give me 3 women, by all means, who know how to officiate and work together instead of just haphazardly throwing 3 random people together, seemingly. Seriously, have Pat Adams ever met either one of those guys until yesterday? What are we doing here? Just like we have teams in basketball, we're not just in the NCAA tournament, just haphazardly throwing new guys together on Missouri and Drake. No, obviously, they're going to have one team that's playing the entire season together. Shouldn't the officiating be the exact same way? What exactly am I missing here? And if it's going to cost more money. What are we talking about here? The problem is, the NCAA, the SEC, the Big Ten, they obviously just don't care. They don't care because they know we're going to come back, or at least this is their mentality. They know that no matter how good or bad the officiating is, people are going to come back and watch anyway. Okay, do as many casual fans watch March Madness as they used to? I know the money's great, but is the sport growing or is it shrinking? I think it's obviously shrunk in terms of, from when I was a kid, so much more national interest. If you don't think officiating isn't part of that, I don't know what to tell you. It's a pretty low-cost fix, in my opinion. But you know what? That'll be the end of my rantings this morning. I think it's time to move on to other thoughts and perhaps other pursuits for the next few days here. So thank you all very much for joining me here on Locked On Mizzou, and I will see you all next time.